let's turn to domestic politics because this is something we have been tracking really closely. Let's go ahead and put this piece up on the screen. So that congressional stock trading ban that supposedly Nancy Pelosi was trying to get through last week fell apart, and The Intercept has some great reporting here arguing that House Democratic leadership designed that stock trading ban to fail. That is according to some of the negotiators who were involved. You know, we have been covering this extensively from the beginning. We covered it extensively last week. Basically what happened is you had a bipartisan effort. There were a bunch of different versions of this bill, but there was the most serious effort happening with Abigail Spanberger, was the Democrat in the House. I think that Elizabeth Warren was involved in the Senate. There was a lot of negotiating with the Republicans. You had a sort of consensus around some of the key provisions. They were pretty close to the finish line in ironing out these details. And then House leadership comes in over the top with this totally different bill at the last minute. And there were a couple of provisions in there that negotiators are saying basically they put these in to make it fail. Some of these actually made the bill stronger. Like, for example, it was expansive. It applied not just to the legislative branch, but also to the executive branch and also to the judicial branch. That apparently was like a poison pill for Republicans in the Senate. Now, that sort of sucks because you should have it apply to all those groups. But that was one way that they altered the bill to try to design it to fail. The other way was to make it much weaker. And we talked a lot about that last week with these like qualified blind trusts, that they basically created this gigantic loophole where those qualified blind trusts could basically mean anything. And it was just a way of totally undercutting this entire bill. So you both made it weaker and you made it more expansive with a predictable result that ultimately, with this being ushered through at the last minute, it falls apart. Abigail Spanberger, let's go ahead and put this up on the screen, who was, as I mentioned, very involved in this and who I have all sorts of other issues with, but on this issue, she has been pretty good. She was scathing in her analysis and directly pointed the finger at Pelosi and House leadership. She says this moment marks a failure of House leadership. This moment is yet another example of why I believe the Democratic Party needs new leaders in the halls of Capitol Hill, as I have long made known. She goes on to say, rather than bring members of Congress together who are passionate about this issue, House leadership chose to ignore these voices, push them aside, look for new ways they could string the media and the public along and evade public criticism. So what she's saying there is basically like, they wanted the appearance like they were trying on this, but making sure that ultimately it didn't pass. Then she goes on to lay that out more directly. She says, as part of their diversionary tactics, the House Administration Committee was tasked with creating a new bill and ultimately introduced a kitchen sink package that they knew would fail with only days until the end of the legislative session and no time to fix it. The package released earlier this week was designed to fail. It was written to create confusion surrounding reform efforts and complicate a straightforward reform priority while creating the appearance that leadership wanted to act. And she concludes by saying, in the months ahead, I will be dogged in my efforts to ban members of Congress from using the privilege of their position to profit. I look forward to working with my Democratic and Republican colleagues to get these reforms done. So that from a Democratic member pointing the finger at Pelosi. Hoyer has been another one who has been a longtime opponent of any of these sorts of reforms, to say, y'all wanted the media to be convinced that you cared about this, but in reality, you did everything to make sure this did not come to pass.
Yeah, and it's odd about Mr. Hoyer, because he's actually not personally that wealthy, which is what makes me even more skeptical about why he would fight for all of this. Like, it's not like he has all that much money. You know, apparently his net worth is like 300th in the House. He's got like a net worth of like $76,000.
Well, he's got to better himself, Saagar.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So it's these guys who are the ones who are like, oh, hold on a second. We're not going to take some strategic advantage away.
I haven't cashed in yet.
Yeah, like I mean, he's like 80 years old, but I guess he's protecting it. He's probably protecting his kids and his family, if I had to guess.
True.
So that's always the issue, and why we need to remove any appearance of corruption, whether it's corrupt or not. As I said, my personal position is that you're guilty and proven innocent whenever you're actively trading securities as a member of Congress.
I agree.
You need to remove that. Abigail Spanberger's words should be taken very, very seriously, torpedoed by House leadership, poison pills from the very beginning, wait out the clock game. And, you know, Ukraine's happening. What did we do? We led our show with Ukraine. We have no choice but to. But these things are still important, and they killed it for this whole Congress. The idea this is going to get a vote in lame duck, I think is a total joke. I don't think that we're going to see it again. And if the Republicans take charge, let's see. I mean, they talk a big game. Are you going to pass it?
Right.
Are you going to pass it or not, Kevin?
And if you do pass it, what's it going to look like? Because there's a million ways to write this bill where it's effectively meaningless. I mean, the Democrats honestly previewed one of those ways with this like qualified blind trust bullshit. Like they could pick right up on that. And but there are a bunch of ways you could do this. Where
or leave the
totally
judiciary out. They shouldn't leave the judiciary. Why should the judges be allowed to trade stocks?
Oh, I mean, it may even be more significant, the judiciary, than it is even for members of Congress. It is grotesque. We covered here the way that these judges had financial interests in the case that they were overseeing, and then lo and behold, they tended to rule in favor of their own personal financial interests.
Yeah, they were like, oh, I forgot. I didn't know I had it. I'm like, really, dude? You forgot you own stock in this particular company?
Right, and just so happened that all of your rulings went in that direction. Right. Wow, isn't that convenient? So, yeah, I mean, it absolutely should apply to the judicial branch as well. And, you know, there was this member, Stephanie Murphy, last week who was arguing like, oh, passing this would be so hard on frontline members. It's like, frontline means people who are in these like swing districts who are facing a tough reelect, which by the way, Abigail Spanberger is one of those members. I actually live in the district has been drawn so that I live in that district now. It's basically a toss up, I think, in terms of whether Spanberger is going to be able to hold on or the Republican is gonna take her out. But the idea that this would be a tough vote for members, it is quite the opposite. This is one of the most popular bipartisan things that you could possibly do. And now, and they point this out in that Intercept article, Pelosi is basically denied her members in tough seats, like something else that they could point to and run on. Like she's denied them that opportunity to have something really popular and significant corruption reform that they could run on and point to. So it actually hurts Democrats. I mean, I'm not going to say it's like a game changer, but on the margin, it definitely hurts Democrats in these districts trying to hold on.
No, of course. I mean, if I was Fetterman, I would love this, you know, to be able to run on this to highlight with Oz. But, you know, congrats to Nancy Pelosi protecting her family, her interests. And not just, you know, look, it's much bigger than Pelosi. It's all of them. There's hundreds of them, 72 who violated the Stock Act just in the last year. So this is a totally bipartisan problem. She's just kind of the symbol of it.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.